Right, there was something going on where, yeah, and because Ryan was somehow connected to Provena, right?
Yeah.
The Attorney General had some Provena
What
connection.
had happened, he found out about, so we went up to Chicago, and I think, Bob had found out that the head of Provena had actually sat down, had an in-person meeting with the Attorney General's assistant attorney who filed this motion, and basically came and had a meeting with her and said, you need to investigate them. And the whole notion was that, like, the Attorney General's office doesn't do the bidding of corporations and investigate, consumers and residents of the state just on behalf of a corporation. It was essentially harassment in the Attorney General. So anyway, Bob knew about this, like, conspiracy that they didn't know that we knew about. So we go up to Chicago.
Well, I remember the meeting, and it got pretty weird and intense. But but in the end, they said, "You're right. We're wrong. We'll drop the whole case." If I remember it correctly, yeah.
Yeah. Basically, at some point during the meeting, they're asking us questions. We're going through the documents and all this, and then finally, Bob just lets it fly. He said, he said in his Bob way. So on this date at this time, you, attorney, asshole, met with, so and so and all that, and then you could just see the look on their faces. It was like sort of like, it's up,
yeah,
it's done.
Jig's up, man.
Like we know what you. But he let them take us through all this stuff where I'm showing them documents, and all this stuff, and then it was done. But it was when Mike was talking about earlier. Be careful who you go after, because they will use ways to come after you.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was a very heavy-handed way. And actually, the Attorney General's office, if they investigate you, even if they find that you've done nothing wrong, and I don't know if this is still true, but they can charge you money for their investigation of you. And so this could have killed Champaign County healthcare consumers financially. So this was a really heavy-handed tactic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I don't know if there were other things after that you were...
Yeah.
I always seek you out for advice and stuff.
Right. Well, there was a lot of around that whole I guess the two things of my involvement at the end was the Carl community benefit stuff. Because the fear was if the clinic goes nonprofit, then they won't pay taxes, so that raised a lot of concern among the government, the school district, and the city. It was like, oh my God, we don't want you to become nonprofit, because if you become nonprofit, then you won't pay taxes to us. And the community was like, well, that could be pretty cool, because if all those millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars become nonprofit, they have an obligation as a nonprofit to provide free and low-cost services and do other kinds of things in the community, because they're going to get tax-exempt status. So it could really benefit people if this huge for-profit thing now has become nonprofit. What are the benefits we're going to get? And I'm convinced that Carl much preferred to not pay the taxes and do that, but when the community responded saying, well, then you have all these other obligations, it was like, well, that takes away the whole advantage of becoming this thing. We were doing it to not pay taxes, now we're going to have to pay more in benefits than actually taxes, and so they dropped the thing on it. Yeah.
It was actually a really tense time, because we were trying to form this fair share coalition where the schools would be on our side, even though the schools, as Mike said, it basically felt like they would lose a ton of money. And so we had that's actually when we started researching Mayo Clinic, okay, because Carl always compares themselves to Mayo. Oh, we're the Mayo of, the Champaign County, or East Central Illinois. It's the furthest thing from the truth. We found out that Mayo Clinic is nonprofit, but they make
payment in lieu of tax.
In lieu of taxes, because they recognize that by not paying property taxes, they're depriving, the schools and the city and all that of property tax revenue, so they voluntarily make payments in lieu of taxes, plus they offer financial assistance, plus, they really invest in local education, because they realize that their employees, of tomorrow are the children of today going through the school system locally. So it's really, don't ever believe that Carl is anything like Mayo at all, know. And so,
well, I think that's one of the common things is that people, it always amazes me that institutions will say stuff, and they, you can't take it for face value. You always have to verify it and find out what's true. And to me, where that really happened the first time was the HMO stuff, when they would just say this stuff. We assumed that they were right, that they had that the utilization, that people were coming in and they were overutilizing the doctor's office, and we assumed that was all right. We just wanted to document, well, how much money they're going to get, and is that really the thing, and is this really working? And then when we found out that all that was made up, that all of their utilization rates, their visits to doctors per year had dropped, the hospital stays had dropped, all this stuff was dropping. It was like, what do you mean? What's the justification for this stuff? Mm-hmm. So,
can you talk a little bit about maybe just I know you probably weren't prepared to do this, but thinking of some of the lessons learned, or some of the things that repeat over and over again that you keep seeing, that you saw, that we still see, like the stuff about that, like, I mean, just a variety of things, like healthcare providers can say whatever they want, but we can never be wrong on the facts,
right.
And all that, and then also just about how it is a common tactic to criticize, an organization about their tactics or strategy, and
to deflect from the real issues at hand. Yes, I think that, and I think, well, one thing is, to me, I remember seeing this story on 60 Minutes, and it was during the Reagan years, and the economy was really tanking at the time, and a lot of the industrial Midwest was hurting, the Rust Belt, and this was about an organization that was in, I think it was Pittsburgh, it was Western Pennsylvania, and the 60 Minutes was doing a story about the communities organizing against corporate people or something, and in some ways, I always remember talking about it because it's not too often that they talk about community organizing on 60 Minutes or anywhere else. And it was so disappointing to see the story, and I was never sure, God, did they pick the wrong organization and the wrong organizing, or they do a disservice to what it was? But they totally focused on the tactics of the group in Western Pennsylvania, which is unemployed workers who were fighting back corporations who were laying off people and stuff like that. And one of the tactics was, this one organization was that they threw red dye, water, or red paint on some corporate guy and said, the blood of the community is on your hands. But it was this thing, and that's what 60 Minutes was really focusing on. And unfortunately, the organizer said this thing, and maybe it was the organizer, but he said, he's causing all this pain for people in the community, and we want to know what it's like to feel humiliated and to feel that way. And so that's why we did it. And it's like, really? I mean, tactics should never be for the purpose of tactics. It's not like punishing people. There's really nothing. That it always should be well, how does this get us closer to making people's lives better? I mean, that's what it should be about. And I think the general view of community organizing and of protest organizing is, oh, they go out and they protest. Because that's what the TV like. The TV loves conflicts, they love signs, they like posters, oh, the people are angry, and all that sort of stuff. But it's really, those are always just means to get to where you want to go. It should never be about that. I mean, that isn't why we do this, is so some guy feels humiliated. My God, if you want him to save jobs, then he should be saving jobs. He shouldn't be humiliated. So I think one of the real lessons that it's always hard is people get caught up in the tactics, and the other side always focuses on the tactics, and the media always love the tactics. And for us, it's always that thing where I was saying before, what existed before we were organizing, what exists after we were organizing, and what we have to always judge ourselves on. If that's not getting better, then we're not doing something right. That if that's the same thing exists now, it does matter, but we've humiliated a few people, that's really not organizing. That's just humiliating people, and maybe you feel good about it, but it doesn't really, that's not what we should be doing with our time. It should be really about making changes that are really concrete and that people can say that. Because that's also why people get involved. I mean, so there's this sort of thing, that people, part of organizing, there's this thing, from Midwest Academy and Saul Lansky, that, you want to give people a sense of their own power, so that partly means the tactics you choose to involve lots of people so that they can do it, so when there is change, they feel part of it, so you don't want to just hire some lawyer who goes off and does something, and so then when you win, or if not, people say, oh, I couldn't do anything about it. It had to be a lawyer, so way to go hire. I mean, I've seen many groups in this community. There was one around utility rate increases when Illinois Power was building the power plant and people were organizing. They had this huge rally over at the Ramada Inn. There had to be 500 people there. People were really pissed about their utility bills. And what they voted to do was to raise money, $10,000, and they hired a law firm for retainer. And then everyone went home, and I don't have to do anything because we raised $10,000, and we have a lawyer who's going to go into the rate case at the thing, and that group never lasted. And I always remember talking to people, and they said, no, you know, the lawyer got really complicated, and we had nothing to do. We were just waiting for it. And it goes on for months, and sometimes goes on for years. So one of the things is that you do want to give people a sense of their own power, right? I mean, because that's what people get involved in it because they do it. But then you also, the second principle is always making real change in people's lives so that people see it, because that's why they keep coming back. That's why they bring other people in, is because, hey, it made a difference. They used to discriminate against us, now they don't. This policy used to be there, now it isn't. So those real concrete improvements, that's why people get involved and get others involved. And then the last one is altering the relationships of power, so that the hospitals and the doctors, or, you know, if it's the utility companies, they recognize that how we behave, you know, institutions operate in an environment, and their thing is growth and stability. You know, you can't grow unless things are stable, so they're always responsive to their environment. Oh, we have these zoning thing changes, well, that's going to hurt us here. So they're looking for stability. So part of our role in going out there and protesting is like, oh my God, healthcare consumers complaining about something. What are they complaining about? Oh, we're doing something wrong. We'll fix that because we want stability, quiet, we're okay, we're good, everything's all right, we're moving forward with our plans. So part of our thing is popping up and saying, hey, over here, pay attention, this is a problem, drawing attention to it, giving people that. But over time, I mean, that's what's the beauty of healthcare consumers. It doesn't always happen, but there's an organization there that's now 32 years around, and when, believe me, when the healthcare providers or people are thinking about what we should be doing, they're thinking, well, what's the healthcare consumers going to do? What's the community's response going to be? So they're altering their behavior even before they roll something out. They're thinking about that, and they're altering the relationship of power so that you're not, you know, we're fortunate to live in a country where there is this opportunity to influence stuff, but where there is, what's the word I want to use? I can't think of it. Where there's different sets of interests. And that one of the responsibilities we have in altering the relationship of power is building a base in the community that's ongoing, that gives a voice to people who otherwise don't have a voice in it. And that changes behaviors even before bad things happen. I mean, you still have to be there when bad things happen to make them accountable and stuff like that. But so those are, I think, some of the lessons that I've learned.
Like a perfect place to end.
Don't kill me! Don't kill me!
No, I'm thinking it's cutting the video. That's
Yes,
like
no.
wonderful.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I was just curious, the professor that you did that class, is he still around?
Barry Checkaway?
Oh, that was the professor. Oh, so he was one who broke away. I was going to say, what is he?
So
Around that one. Okay.
sort of sad. So 77, he went to University of Michigan, 82, and the last 9 months he was in town, we didn't talk. I mean, this is a guy who was my mentor, you know, and you know, I called him right before he left, the week before I heard they were leaving, and he said, it's still too raw, can't talk now. And you know, what can you do? I mean, it was probably, again, I would say I was so young, didn't really think through things, and so probably wasn't as good about doing it. And our paths did cross a few years later in a phone call over some foundation, but haven't had any real contact with him since then.
You know, the thing that's like, besides what you said, the other thing that's really sad about it though is that, like, you know, all those other healthcare consumer organizations folded and went away. And here we are 32 years later, and so obviously there was not a wrong decision made.
Well, yes, I don't think, you know, I think it was the right thing to do, certainly at the time. It was the right message to send.
I'm just saying it would be nice if he could see that.
Yeah, well, and maybe he can.
Yeah.
This is being filmed. I don't want to, you know, clearly I feel bad about it. No, that's fine. I mean, I do feel bad about it, you know, and Barry may be very cool. My son is involved in education reform. He's a teacher at the Social Justice High School, and he ran across Barry's thing.
I think the most things that, just from my time being here, is that they seem to have no problem taking credit for things that is just not their work.
And they can't organize like that. Remember there was that one day when they were having like this candidate forum or whatever, and we found out like at the last.
Some things never change. I need a receipt from you. The International House in New Orleans, $270.94, January 29th.
So
So Jeff, that was on our community shares credit card?
Yes. And you gave me the airfare receipt.
Yeah. I don't get anything, because I don't think I had an email thing. So I'll probably get a call.
Yeah, a lot of times you can just call them and then they'll fax it over. We'll just wait for you.
Well, I feel like one of the biggest lessons I feel like I take from this is like, it just is amazing to me how it happens.
Exactly. Well, and actually, one of the things that you did with us, not so long ago, was when we kicked off the healthcare access task force, when we had that community meeting on healthcare access. You came and talked.
I mean, I don't want to give them any money.
About these, Medicaid discrimination struggles in the past, and you sort of made this presentation where you said, like, the only thing that ever changed anything was the community organizing. And so that's what we need to do now.
Yeah, and it's kind of like highways. Remember, someone once said to me,